When you're worried about underarm sweat and odor, it can be distracting. Like this. Or this. Or even this. It's time to silence those distractions with a spray of powerful Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant. Featuring our 72-hour protection and soothing 1/4 moisturizing cream. Because when you forget about your underarms, you can focus on being unforgettable. Dove Men. Forgettable underarms, unforgettable you.
Worried about letting someone else pick out the perfect avocado for your perfect impress them on the third date guacamole? Well, good thing Instacart shoppers are as picky as you are. They find ripe avocados like it's their guac on the line. They are milk expiration date detectives. They bag eggs like the 12 precious pieces of cargo they are. So let Instacart shoppers overthink your groceries so that you can overthink what you'll wear on that third date. Download the Instacart app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
It's time to get in the zone. Time to get in the zone with the 49ers Web Zone. This is the No Huddle Podcast with Al and Brian.
49ers Web Zone No Huddle Podcast. We are part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Al Sacco. He's Brian Renick. Brian, I want to come out on the show and say right away, I'm not overly worried. This isn't a disaster situation by any stretch of the imagination. However, there were some concerns that that I had going into the season. Week 1 kind of eased those concerns. Week 2 sort of brought them back up. And this show is going to be, I think we're going to talk about some of these concerns and where we go from here with them. And if it means anything, if it was just a blip, what it all means right now. But before we do that, what I can't get out of my head when I'm watching these games right now? And I want to know what you think, and then I guess I'll go on with my rant on it. Trent Williams played really well in week 1, and we talked about how surprised we were given that he wasn't there, what he looked like. But he's Trent Williams. Yeah. So I said, okay, Trent didn't look like Trent in this game. Doesn't mean he played awful. I think PFF had him at 80 point something, which is still a very good grade. But he gave up 4 pressures. He gave up a couple hurries or a few plays where one time he got spun around. It just didn't look like Trent Williams. So it was worrisome to me in that regard. Brandon Aiyuk has been invisible. So I have a bit of a rant with this in terms of what these contracts, these holdouts that keep happening, how they affect the beginning of the season and what that essentially means. Am I nuts, or are you kind of feeling the same way with that?
No, absolutely. And as these contract negotiations dragged on over the offseason, one of the things that I continued to bring up was the poor seasons that the 49ers stars had after prolonged contract negotiations. I brought up Nick Bosa. I brought up George Kittle. I brought up Deebo Samuel. And now we're looking at Brandon Aiyuk with an incredibly slow start. And Trent Williams, I mean, it's hard to, it's hard to judge offensive line play. He's not giving up a bunch of sacks or anything. And it is just, again, week 2, but there were some pretty obvious issues with this offense against the Vikings. I know we're going to get into that, but one of the things that I think is most telling about this offense through 2 weeks, shout out to Steph Sanchez, who tweeted this out today, friend of the show, that Brock Purdy is the 4th most sacked quarterback in the NFL at 8. Only Gardner Minshew, Caleb Williams, and Deshaun Watson have been sacked more. But when you dig into the numbers a little bit, you see that Brock Purdy's time to throw is currently 9th slowest at 2.9, which means that he's getting enough time to go through his progressions.
He's holding the ball a little bit.
And his pressure rate is 20th overall. So he's getting sacked on less pressures than some of these other quarterbacks. But here's where I think, again, where we really see why this is happening. Through 2 weeks, Brock Purdy's average separation on throws is the lowest in the league at 2.9 yards, which is leading to more tight window throws. So Purdy currently leads the league in tight window rate at 24.6%. So basically what that means is that Brock Purdy has plenty of time to throw. The problem is his receivers are not getting open. And that is not necessarily something that we're used to as 49er fans, because we've been told time and time again that anybody can play receiver in Kyle Shanahan's offense. He's going to scheme you open anyway. And the reality is that's not happening right now. And that's not happening because, one, they played a Jets team that has a really, really good secondary.
3 awesome corners. Absolutely.
Talent-wise, that's what they saw in week 1. In week 2, the Minnesota Vikings went with a pressure-heavy man scheme that proved to be very difficult for the 49ers to go against. And it's very similar to what we saw in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs in the second half. The 49ers don't have wide receivers who create separation on their own against man coverage. Kyle Shanahan can scheme you with 15 yards of separation if you're facing a team that plays a lot of zone. But when it goes to man, that is going to be heavily reliant upon the wide receiver himself to get open, to get separation. And the 49ers wide receivers are not doing that right now. And that was the biggest issue yesterday when it came to, trying to beat this Minnesota Vikings team.
Yeah. And before I go into the Aiyuk stuff, because it goes along with that separation statistics that you're talking about, Purdy's had, at least as far as I can tell from what I've seen from some film and everything, he's had some opportunities to check the ball down, and he's not doing it.
Yep.
So he is holding on to the ball very long. Of those 6 sacks, you could argue a number of them had to do with him holding the ball. Again, I don't know who was open, but I did see in a couple of occasions where he could have checked the ball down. There was a time in week 1 when he could have checked it down to Mason where he forced the ball downfield. So I don't know if he's trying to do too much. I don't know if he's not seeing the field. I don't know if he just has a different approach because McCaffrey's not there. They are missing McCaffrey a lot on third down in the passing game. You can take the running stats out of it. I know Mason is running well. He has had a lot of opportunities to catch the ball, but they're missing McCaffrey clearly on those third downs. Their third down numbers are atrocious. I got some stats I'll talk about in a little bit, but in terms of Aiyuk, and you mentioned the separation, these guys are not getting open. And Aiyuk, he has 6 catches for 71 yards, and his most memorable play over the first 2 games is a drop touchdown pass.
Yeah.
And my thing with this is, and people can put the blame wherever they want to, whether it's the 49ers, whether it's Aiyuk, whether it's a little bit of both.
It's both.
He's making $30 million. It's both. Yeah. But he also admitted to dragging his feet. He said probably made it more difficult than he intended to or wanted to. He doesn't show up until right before the season. They don't get this done. And now you are invisible for the first 2 games.
Yeah.
You are a $30 million a year wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb looks pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I was watching Nico Collins, who Aiyuk makes more than Sunday night. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy is a beast. He's come out of the gates with 200-yard plus games. If you're making that kind of money, I understand there's going to be some rust to knock off. That's expected when you're in this situation. But that doesn't take away the frustration of the fact that you lost a game largely because you couldn't throw the ball because you lack separation, right? So, well, Al, it's week 2. Who cares if they lost the game? Listen, we're not trying to make the playoffs here. This isn't a situation where we're trying to say, okay, hey, we're going to be 10-7 to make the playoffs. This is a situation where we want the bye. The 49ers want the bye. The 49ers want to win the Super Bowl. So these games are huge. The difference between 12-5 and 13-4 could be the bye. It could be home field. So that's huge. So I'm frustrated with that for sure with the Williams situation and the Aiyuk situation. I don't want to just shrug my shoulders and say, it's the first month. They lose a couple games, it's fine. No, every game is important right now. So I'm glad you got your money, but it's frustrating as hell, and this process has to stop so you're ready to go in week 1. And yes, I know that the first month of the season is a little wonky because preseason is the way that it is now. A lot of teams are still trying to find their way. I get all that. But it's frustrating as hell nonetheless, and they have to stop this precedent and actually get guys in early in camp so they're in football shape.
Yeah, 100%. Because here's the reality is again, as 49er fans, we know this. Kyle Shanahan has been here since the 2018 season. This team notoriously starts slow outside of the 2019 season when they started the season 8-0. And then last year. And last year, since Kyle Shanahan has taken over in San Francisco, including the first 2 weeks of 2024, his September record is 13-9, which is a .590 win percentage. His October win total is 12-14, which is obviously under 500. And then in November, they start to turn it on. 13-7, December 16-11, January regular season 4-2, and in the playoffs, obviously 8-4. Those 4 losses coming either in the Super Bowl or the conference championship. Kyle Shanahan has not lost a game prior to a conference championship. Impressive. But this team starts slow. But if the team is going to start slow, you don't want your wide receiver to start even slower, right? Your $30 million a year wide receiver. You need him to overcome some of these slow starts. You're paying this man $30 million a year because you think that he can take a game over if you need him to. And so far he hasn't done that. And that is to me the biggest disappointment so far in this offensive performance. The other one is, you talked about it, right? There's been some opportunities where Brock Purdy could dump it off. I honestly think for whatever reason, Brock Purdy doesn't trust Jordan Mason. And I know Mason has had his difficulties in the pass game in the past, and that's probably kind of coloring Purdy's view of it. But you said it. This offense is missing Christian McCaffrey. Not for stats, right? Mason is doing a wonderful job running the ball. They're missing Christian McCaffrey because they're missing the gravity of Christian McCaffrey as a player, especially on third down, when teams have to account for him coming out of the backfield, where going pressure heavy man, right? You can punish that with Christian McCaffrey, but you've got to give Jordan Mason the opportunity to at least try and replicate some of that, because if you're not, you are really hamstringing this offense. And the problem is again, Purdy isn't even looking to Mason, even in opportunities when he's wide open for a dump off. Because here's what I love about Jordan Mason. Kyle Posey posted this, Kyle Posey of Niners Nation. He's tied for the most 10+ yard carries and 15+ mile per hour rushes, first downs, and broken tackles through 2 weeks. And he's second in total rushing. 75% of that is 75% of which has come after contact. How do you think he's gonna do if you get him the ball in open space, right? Like, get him on some DBs, try and make some DBs tackle that guy, right? Like, they're not going to want to. They're going to make business decisions because this guy is an absolute wrecking ball. Let's get him the ball in space. Let's get him some choice routes. Let's get him some screens. Let's get him some things that, again, will get him the ball in space and get him on some defenders that are going to really struggle to get him down to the ground. So I think that's, again, one of the biggest things that's been missing is just Christian McCaffrey's gravity. But I think you have to give Mason an opportunity to, like I said, at least try and replicate some of that. Obviously, he's not Christian McCaffrey when it comes to route running, when it comes to hands, all of that. We know that. But if he can be half of Christian McCaffrey, that is going to help you, especially on third downs.
And McCaffrey had 67 catches last year. Jordan Mason has 2 right now. So the running back in the passing game has been completely taken out of this offense, and we're feeling it on third down without CMC. They were combined 3 of 13 on third and fourth down in week 2. For the season, they're 9 of 26, 34%, which is in the bottom third of the league. They had chances in this game. If they convert on a couple of those fourth downs, it's probably a completely different game. But they didn't. They had some protection issues, especially on the 4th and 1. I absolutely hated the shotgun call there. And then they had a free rusher come in. And then we just saw some news come in. Deebo was expected to miss a couple of weeks due to a calf strain. Our producer, Spencer Ray. So that's news, Brian, and that sucks. If that is the case. And we're going to look
7 minutes ago from Adam Schefter, and then 15 minutes ago from Nick Wagner of ESPN. Nick Wagner covers the 49ers for ESPN. Deebo Samuel strained his calf Sunday and expected to miss a couple weeks.
So here goes. We're talking about concerns here. Let me lead that into my next concern. This is an older team who has fought some injuries, who has played 60 games in the last couple of years. When you start losing these studs, when you don't have the Avengers, you start to become normal, right? They're not really superheroes without everybody out on the field, it feels like. So now you don't have McCaffrey for an extended period of time. And McCaffrey's played, 8 years in the league? This is the 3rd year where he's going to miss likely more than half of the season. So he's running back. He gets hurt. This stuff happens. And Deebo, too. Deebo's a guy who gets banged up. So now you're not going to have Deebo for a few weeks. You're not going to have McCaffrey. Now you're really going to have to try to figure it out. And now Aiyuk is really going to have to step up, right?
Yeah. He's got to be a $30 million wide receiver now. Has to be for this offense to succeed. Here's one thing that I think the 49ers are a little bit better situated for this Deebo injury than they have in the past because they do have Jacob Cowing. I think we're going to see a bit more of Jacob Cowing and some of those, end arounds, wide receiver screens, things like that. I think they're going to have to incorporate him and his speed. Obviously, he's not Deebo Samuel. He's not a bowling ball. He's not a bowling ball with knives, right? His game is speed. But we saw it in the preseason. We saw Cowing, I believe, scored on a wide receiver. I think it was a jet sweep, maybe. I can't remember exactly, or at the very least, a big gain on it. So you're going to have to see Jacob Cowing step up, but more than that, again, it's going to have to be Brandon Aiyuk. And so far, we haven't really seen that from Aiyuk. When Deebo's been out, Aiyuk has been pretty bottled up, right? And now it's Deebo and Christian McCaffrey. So there's going to have to be some, I don't know. I don't know if Kyle Shanahan is going to have to adapt some of his play calling, if he's going to have to change some things up. I don't know what it's going to be, but this offense might be on the struggle bus for a few weeks if they can't get it figured out. Luckily they play the Rams this week, who it feels like are going to have trouble fielding 53 guys on their roster with how many injuries they have. But then after that, you've got the Patriots, who Gerard Mayo seems to be leading those guys in that defense pretty well. That's a big loss, just again because, like CMC, Deebo does have gravity. Where he's lined up affects the defense. Sending him in motion affects the defense, like all of that. And so, like I said, I think Jacob Cowing can do a fairly nice imitation of Deebo in some ways, but obviously he isn't Deebo. And so again, Aiyuk is going to have to step up. He's going to have to be the big dog. You're paying him to be the big dog. He better be the big dog.
And Aiyuk has been really the main focus of this offense. He leads the team in targets. He has 19. Kittle's next with 13. Deebo's got 13 receptions for 164 yards. He also has 10 carries, only 13 yards on the carries. The running hasn't been going too well with him, but he did score a touchdown. So Deebo's been a huge focal point of the offense early. And now without him, right, that's another change that they're going to have to make. No CMC, no Deebo. And you're right, teams have to account for Deebo Samuel. Every time he's out there, teams have to game plan for Deebo because he's such a unicorn. He's such a one-on-one. So now they're going to have to figure it out.
Hiring is a lonely business. Posting jobs, sifting through resumes, interviews with unqualified applicants, being ghosted. What if you could link with dozens of qualified candidates who are ready to work right now with just one connection? That's Express Employment Professionals. Find us at expresspros.com. One connection, the workforce you need. Problem solved. Express Employment Professionals. expresspros.com.
Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug? Ignored a leaky faucet? Pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look that way? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects. Whether it's a door that sticks, or a disorganized closet, or an AC unit that only works half the time. It all matters. You just haven't taken care of it yet. But there's an easier way. Just download the Thumbtack app. You can search for what you need done and find tons of highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Check prices, reviews, and book a pro right on the spot. Plus, you'll know what to tackle next, because Thumbtack is the app that shows you what to do, who to hire, and when. Pull out your phone and in just a few taps, say goodbye to all those unfinished home projects and say hello to caring for your home the easier way. Download Thumbtack and start a project today.
As a Ford owner, there are lots of choices of where to get your vehicle serviced. You could choose to go to their place, the local dealership, your place, home, apartment, or condo, your workplace, even your happy place, like your cottage on the lake. Go to your Ford dealer or choose Ford Pickup and Delivery to have your vehicle picked up, serviced, and brought right back. Or choose mobile service, where a technician will come to you and do routine maintenance right on the spot. Both are complimentary and depend on your location. That's ownership built around you. Contact your participating dealer or visit fordservice.com for important details and limitations.
Brian, I have to ask you, Brian Flores, Mike McDonald, Jim Schwartz, you mentioned Spags in the Super Bowl. These guys kind of have Kyle Shanahan's number. I know you have to have the horses to do what they do, but is there a worry there at all that it's been 2 out of the last 3 games when you look at the Super Bowl and you look at this game, where the teams are starting to adjust and maybe taking things away? And this is the season, and this is just the point where Purdy has to become more than maybe just an extension of Kyle out there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Purdy leads the NFL in passing yards. It's not like he's playing horrible. Right. I'm not saying that, but this is going to become the point now where maybe Kyle and Purdy need to make some adjustments. Purdy does have to move around a little bit more. I thought there were times when he just, you'll see him run around and do the Tony Romo thing. There were times in week 2 where he just kind of stood in the pocket. And I was like, dude, like run around and make something happen. So I do wonder a little bit if the book is sort of out and teams are going to start to play the Niners like this, a lot of man blitzes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the book is out. I do think that teams know that is the best way to beat the 49ers. And unless you're going against somebody like Robert Saleh, who is married to the scheme that he runs, I think you're going to see more teams try and run it. The question is, do they have the talent to do it? But here's the thing, like the Vikings don't have a ton of talent on defense. They've got some dudes, but they don't have a ton of talent. They don't have a well-known secondary. They don't have what you would normally think would be a recipe for shutting down a Kyle Shanahan offense. And yet here we are 2 years in a row, Brian Flores holding Kyle Shanahan to 17 points. But yeah, I absolutely think that the book is out. I absolutely think that that's what teams are going to try and do. And so I thought that Kyle Shanahan, with the drafting of Ricky Pearsall, with the drafting of Jacob Cowing, with the push to sign Brandon Aiyuk to $30 million a year, right? Like, to me, that is Kyle Shanahan saying, all right, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to get guys who can get separation, guys who are crisp route runners, guys who, have speed, top end speed to take the top off the defense. And we haven't seen that yet. And so, again, obviously, everything that's happened with Ricky Pearsall, that's not, can't blame Pearsall for that.
Right.
But it certainly seemed like Kyle Shanahan learned a little bit from the Super Bowl. Like, all right, I've got to figure out a way if teams do this to me to counter it in some way. And really the only way is to have guys that can be winners when it comes to route running and when it comes to getting separation. And Brandon Aiyuk has typically been that, but missing as much time as he did, it looks like he's struggling to be that right now. Jawan Jennings is that, but at a sticks, depth, if you will. Like, he's not going much past the sticks, and really he's creating separation with his body more than he is with his route running. But I mean, it is a concern. It absolutely is a concern. And then the other thing is, again, if it's going to be pressure heavy and a lot of man, this offensive line is going to have to hold up in pass protection. And not every sack is an O-line sack. And Purdy went down 6 times. Not all of that is on the offensive line. Some of that is on Brock Purdy, but that is a concern with, again, Trent's prolonged holdout and just the history of Colton McKivitz. So yeah, that is definitely a concern.
Yeah, man, that Deebo news. Wow. Unbelievable. I kind of feel like when it rains, it pours a little bit. It just feels, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but the vibes right now just feel, after that game and having Deebo going out and CMC on IR, it's rough, man. And okay, more concerns. The other side of the ball. Anybody who listens to this show knows I had a lot of concerns about the defense. I wasn't sure how the safeties were going to be, especially without Hufanga. And even when Hufanga comes back, how long is it going to take him to look like himself? I wasn't sure about the D-line. A lot of new pieces in the D-line. Are they going to be able to stop the run? And with Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley as well, this is a new defense. It may take some time to get acclimated. So the Niners this season, they've given up 59% the third down conversions. So 59% third down conversion rate. That is not good at all.
No.
In week 2, the yards per play for the Vikings was 7.8. Now, I know they had a 97-yard touchdown, But again,
it still counts.
It still counts.
It happened.
And it was played horribly by the safeties. You can not let Justin Jefferson get behind you. I mean, unbelievable. That they didn't have Lenore or Ward shadowing him is insane to me. Yards per rush, and this is, again, the big thing I was worried about, 6.7 in this game. 6.7 yards per carry against the team with Sam Darnold. Aaron Jones is a good running back, but Aaron Jones didn't even have that great of a game.
Mm-hmm.
It was what, Ty Chandler's? It
was Ty Chandler.
Right?
Ty Chandler had 10 rushes for 89 yards.
Yeah, he was just going up and down the field.
82 yards, sorry. 82 yards, yeah.
And on third downs in this game, the Vikings were 7 for 12.
Mm-hmm.
That is concerning. And if Fred Warner wasn't amazing, Fred Warner may be the best defensive player in the league.
This would have been a blowout.
Games. It would have been a blowout. Yeah. Aaron Jones is running in to make it 27-7, and Warner punches that ball out.
Yeah.
If he gets in there, I mean, the game is far from over. And that changed the momentum. And the Niners come back and get a score. And the defense goes back on the field and gives up, a 16-play drive? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just, it wasn't good. And you saw the things, the worrisome things, the safeties. I don't know what the hell was going on in coverage, because you have two lockdown corners. I don't know what the hell the scheme was with coverage at all in this game.
Yeah.
And they got run on. And this was, I know he's had a couple of good games, but this isn't Patrick Mahomes. This isn't Joe Burrow. This is Sam Darnold. And he did have a Sam Darnold play. He did have a Sam Darnold throw that Warner picked off. But they made him look, or maybe he just looked, very good in this game. So big concern for me is the defense moving forward. I don't know if it'll be a huge issue the next couple of weeks, because you have a beat-up Rams team and a Patriots offense that is terrible, although scrappy, but not a lot of talent there.
But you know what that Patriots offense can do?
Run the ball. Run the ball. And, well, the Rams have no offensive line. I mean, they're playing four stringers on offensive line.
No, I was talking about the Patriots, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, just for the next 2 weeks. So in theory, both teams could run the ball. But you're right. The Patriots can do that. And the Patriots have a scrappy defense. So it is concerning. Again, not things to jump off a bridge over, but just if you had some concerns, week 1, ease them. Now week 2 is probably bringing them back out. And at this point, we have to figure out, well, which is it? Are these actually concerns? Are they not concerns? Or is it a little bit of both? And I think right now it's a little bit of both. And with the injury bug, this is going to be, I mean, I'm glad they have some cupcakes in theory coming up, but this is going to be trying for the Niners the next few weeks.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have thought it, but a big matchup looming on Thursday Night Football in Seattle after that Patriots game, because Seattle's 2-0 right now and leading the division. So, you know, we were really impressed with the 49ers performance last week on Monday night against the Jets. And we thought it was more a statement from the 49ers rather than a referendum on the Jets. It seems maybe it was a little bit of both now, right? It's a referendum on Nathaniel Hackett, who just sucks at his job. Like, let's just be perfectly honest. Nathaniel Hackett is not a good offensive coordinator. But you know who is a good offensive coordinator? Kevin O'Connell. The head coach,
tremendous coach
of the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
And because of that, you had a game where the 49ers defense was exposed a little bit, both on the ground and in the air. And like you said, there's just no excuse for two safeties being on Justin Jefferson in coverage when you have Charvarius Ward and Deommodore Lenoir on your team. Like you've and even Charvarius Ward said after the game, like, I feel like I do my best when I shadow their best wide receiver. So again, why that wasn't on the docket, if you will, I'm not sure. Hopefully, again, you live and you learn and you adapt and you change, and you know, things hopefully look different next week. Now, again, next week they're playing a Rams team that is going to be without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and without most of their offensive line. A Rams team that got absolutely obliterated by the Cardinals, 41-10 last week. You know, obviously they're going to be desperate, but regardless of how desperate they are, they're just so injured that I don't know that it's going to make a whole lot of difference. And so, you know, there really isn't a test for this defense outside of, again, can they shore up their run defense? There's not really going to be a test until that Thursday night game against Seattle, at least for the secondary. and for, coverage scheme, if you will. And so, again, hopefully that gets fixed. But, obviously we won't know until we see it. I was really impressed with the quick adaptations and changes that Sorensen made against the Jets after that first scoring drive. It just didn't seem like it was there this week against the Vikings. So just like the 49ers, I'd say Sorensen is 1-1 right now.
Yeah, we don't know. We just don't know. And how much of this is Brandon Staley too? We keep saying Sorensen. Brandon Staley has a huge imprint on this defense. Huge. So we have to see it. You're exactly right. They're 1-1 right now. And our buddy Coach Yak put up on Twitter, coverage snaps, 32 for Demo, 8 yards allowed. 32 for Ward, 10 yards allowed. According to this, neither allowed a catch to Jefferson. I mean, what are we doing? And they didn't have Jordan Addison in this game. Right. Hockenson is hurt. And Justin Jefferson went out for most of the second half. It didn't seem to matter. The Vikings are still going up and down the field. So it could be, look, the Niners haven't won in Minnesota since 1992. Maybe it's just a house of horrors. Maybe this stuff is just going to happen there. Right? It's just a curse. There's just something in the air. It's just not going to happen. But there was enough there, concern-wise, with some of those things where we have to wait and see more. We still don't know what this defense is. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what it's going to be without Trey Greenlaw. We don't know what Hufanga is going to be when he gets back. This may not be the defense that you just think the Niners go on the field and they're going to give up 15 points. It may not be. We have to kind of wait and see what it is. I mean, they didn't give up a ton of points, but again, if Jones doesn't fumble that ball, it might have been a 30-something game. It might have gone that way. So we'll have to wait and see how things play out with that and with the defense.
What's better than watching your team win? Winning money while you do it. I'm Jim Costa, and on Cash the Ticket, Mike Valenti and I give you the edge to make every game playable. College football, NFL, we're breaking it all down game by game. Your podcast feed is going to be filled, and you're going to love it. You can click on the games you care about. We do it all. With our analysis, we're finding games that other people aren't talking about. We're turning every Saturday and every Sunday into days where you got a chance to win. Don't just sit on the sidelines. Cash the Ticket with us. Follow Cash the Ticket in the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
And the other thing that was in this game, and again, moving forward, it's not something that I anticipate to happen every week, but Kyle Shanahan got out-coached. The Niners got out-coached everywhere. Flores and kind of Kevin O'Connell, who are a terrific duo, out-coached the hell out of them. And the other thing that keeps rearing its ugly head with this team, special teams. You get a punt blocked, you give up 3 points, you muff a punt that you're lucky to get back. That could have been a disaster. So just these little things that keep happening. And if you don't have the Avengers there, and right now they're down 2, Deebo and CMC are both going to be out for a while, these little things are going to eventually start to catch up with you. And they did in week 2.
Yeah. You're hard pressed to win a game when you have a turnover on special teams, which is what I would consider a punt block, right? That's a turnover. Again, you watch it back, and for whatever reason, Robert Beal and Demetrius Flanagan fouls. I don't know if it was a miscommunication on their part. I don't know if it was just an error in block scheme. Not sure, but you can see Robert Beal watching CJ Ham as he's 2 yards past him and about to block the punt. Yeah. I don't know what it is about Kyle Shanahan's tenure. They've just never been a good special teams team, which is wild, especially with the level of talent that they have on this team. You should be able to field a pretty decent special teams coverage unit and all of that with them, a number of athletes that they have on this team. Brian Schneider, fielded a top 5 special teams in Seattle. Don't know how he did that because it hasn't really translated here. I don't know if it's in need of another coordinator. I know Kyle Shanahan. I think if you were to sit Kyle Shanahan down and give him some truth serum and say, Kyle, how do you feel about special teams? I genuinely believe his answer would be, I don't give a shit. Right? Like, it just certainly seems like he doesn't care at all about special teams. Not, it's like the exact opposite of Bill Belichick, who cared a lot about special teams.
That's infuriating, and I don't know that
shows.
I don't know that you're wrong, but that's an infuriating statement to me because they might have lost the Super Bowl because of it.
Mhm,
And Bill Belichick did put an emphasis on it, and he made sure he had
mhm,
people like Matthew Slater on as one of the best special teams players of all time
mhm.
on his team. He made sure he always had a Vinatieri and a Gostkowski, kickers like that. He made it a huge emphasis, all three facets of the game. And
Yeah,
you may be 100% right because it doesn't seem like he gives a shit.
yeah,
So to have that mindset and have it keep biting you in the ass over and over and over and over again is frustrating. Again, I
yeah.
don't think they're going to go 7-10 this year. I'm not saying that, but
No,
we're also
no.
not talking about. I don't give a shit if they win 11 games this year. I give a shit if they win the Super Bowl.
Mhm,
I don't care if they win. I don't care if they go 15-2. At this point, this team has to win the Super Bowl.
mhm.
So when you have these little things that keep happening and they over and over again, it doesn't look like it's fixed. And you just saw a pump go off somebody's leg and a missed extra point that literally cost you the championship however many months ago. It's frustrating as hell. And I think fans are there. And listen, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to get pissed at a week 2 loss. It doesn't mean you think the sky is falling. It doesn't mean you think
Or
they're a
that
bad
Kyle
team. It doesn't
Shanahan
mean you
should
think
be
Kyle's a bad
fired.
coach. It doesn't mean any of that. Right. It just means you didn't like what you saw in week 2. It means you think there's some issues that they have to correct. And as a fan, you have every right to say that. You have every right to voice that. So, and that's what we're doing here. And I hope fans feel like they can do that wherever on social. I don't people on social
Yeah.
media can be assholes, but
Eh,
wherever
eh,
you want to do that, you have a right. If you're pissed at that game and there was a lot to be pissed about, you have a right as a fan to say that's kind of bullshit. And I'm tired of these contracts, and I'm tired of the special teams, and I don't know what the coaching game plan was there. It's okay, man. It was frustrating. It's if that's where your head is, that's where your head is.
Yeah, and the sky isn't falling. The 49ers had a short week, right? They played on Monday night. They had a short week. That is difficult in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
They struggle in that building for whatever reason, or in that state, I should say, not in that building. They do struggle in that building, but that building is newer. But here's the good news. The Lions lost at home to the Buccaneers, and the Cowboys got the shit kicked out of them by the New Orleans Saints. And so the other teams that we thought, could challenge for NFC supremacy, the Eagles being one, they play tonight. We'll see what they look like. They didn't look
Mm-hmm.
great against the Packers in that week 1 Friday night game down in Brazil, but it was week 1. They were in Brazil. Like, let's
Terrible field conditions.
Yeah, terrible field conditions. Let's go ahead and see, kind of what that looks like. Even the Packers, right? We don't know how long Jordan Love's going to be out. They eked out a victory, against all odds this past weekend against the Colts. Thoughts out to DeForest Buckner, who looks like he had a pretty significant ankle injury. MRIs came back, nothing broke, but he's going to be gone for a while. And don't like to see that, any former 49er. But also kudos to Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, I don't think gets enough credit as one of the better coaches in the NFL.
Really good coach.
Yeah. The fact that they won a game where Malik Willis was their quarterback is pretty damn impressive.
Basically running a college option offense,
right?
Or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Colts couldn't stop anything. Couldn't stop any of the runs.
Yeah, and so the teams that we thought were going to be there at the end are also having some of their own struggles. So again, that is part of the good news. Obviously, it's just week 2. We're not.
It is. You can throw September out in the NFL.
Yeah.
I guess my point with the Niners is the things I was concerned about. There was a big bright light on them in week 2. That was it. If they just something wonky happened or a ball get tipped or they just didn't show up type thing, but it was the things I was concerned about. I was like, oh shit, this is so now. Which is it? Which way are we going? Or is it going to balance out? That's just kind of where my head is with them right now.
And the other thing that you have to keep in mind with Kyle Shanahan, and again, I'm not saying that this is what is happening, but he is notorious for holding things back early in the season, right? For him to use later in the season and in the playoffs. And, the offense that we see in September is not probably going to be the offense that we see in November and December and into January. And, this is a team that lost to the friggin' Bears in September 2 years ago and lost to the Broncos 2 years ago in September. And those two teams were two of the worst teams in the NFL that season. And how did that season end? brutal loss in the NFC Championship game, but still made it back to the NFC Championship game. So
yeah,
again, just like you can't overreact to week 1, we can't really overreact to week 2. It's early. Again, in the olden days, this would have been week 1 of the regular season, right? It's the second week now. There's only 3 preseason games. We talked about last week being technically the 4th preseason game, right? And so, I don't think there's anything to panic about. The loss of Deebo is big. That's going to be tough for the next few weeks. We got to see more out of Brandon Aiyuk. We got to see more out of this run defense. And we got to see a little bit more out of Sorensen and Staley when it comes to coverages and making sure that, again, in the future, a guy like Justin Jefferson isn't being covered by 2 safeties, one of whom is only starting because Hufanga isn't ready, right? George Odom is not a starting safety in the NFL. He is a special teams ace, great and great at it, right? But you're asking him to do too much if you're asking him to cover Justin Jefferson. That's just not fair to George Odom.
And we're going to find out a lot about Brock Purdy. He can silence a lot of critics over the next couple of weeks, if he plays really well and they win games without Deebo and without CMC. So 100%. It's going to be interesting in Ninerland. It's always interesting in Ninerland. All right, we appreciate everybody listening. Please like, subscribe to the podcast and to our YouTube station. For Brian, I'm out.
Later.
Niners on 3. 1, 2, 3. Niners!
2400 Sports is an Odyssey company.